You are listening to the Tribe Architect podcast. I am your host, Razvan Popescu. For this episode's guide and resources, please visit thetribearchitect.com/2. And now, let's get to this episode. Today, we have an incredibly special guest joining us, Dave Albin, world's #1 firewalker expert. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Raz. Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
Could you begin by sharing a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Be happy to. It started young. When I was, let me back up to the very beginning. So when I was about 2 months from being born, 2 months before I was born, my biological father, who had been a pilot in Korea, we don't know exactly what happened, Roz, but he hurt his head. And they had to put a plate in his head to save his life. Well, apparently it was very painful. And he was complaining about pain all the time to my mother. And he even mentioned to her at one time, I don't know how much longer I can take this. And so 2 months before I was born, he told Mom that he was going to the grocery store, and we never saw or heard from him again. So when I was born to a single mother. And she already had 2 boys. So now there's 3 of us. And they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, California, with my grandmother and another cousin. So there's 6 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And by the time I was 5 years old, my mom just couldn't afford me. And even though she grew up in the Depression, she understood hard work. She was working as a server at the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood, famous place. She worked hard. But again, by the time I was 5, she realized she couldn't feed us all. And it wasn't working. And so she did a very loving thing. She put me up for adoption. And her sister, my aunt and uncle, adopted me. And so I moved from Hollywood to Long Beach, California. So now Bob and Pat Albin are now my parents. My dad is a career, I'm going to refer to him as dad, even though he's not my biological father, but he still raised me. So I'm still going to refer to him as dad, so your listeners know. Bob was a career military, highly decorated officer in World War II. So we had a nice house and we had food on the table. And it was a wonderful, wonderful thing for me to leave that other environment and now be with Bob and Pat Albin. And so 6 years later, when I'm 11 years old, on the very first day of summer, 1964, my mom came and got me and said, "Come in the kitchen that morning, and your father and I need to talk to you." And what I thought she was going to tell me is where we were going to go camping, because we did that a lot. We went camping in Yosemite and Big Bear and Lake Arrowhead and Lake Havasu. We went all over the California area camping when I was a kid. So I thought that's what was going to happen. Well, she set me down and she put her hand on my hand and she had tears in her eyes. And she looked at me and she said, "David, what we need to tell you is we're not your parents." Okay, so what does that mean to an 11-year-old kid? I can't begin to tell you. How do you process that at 11 years old? What do you mean you're not my parents? That's like taking somebody outside and seeing a blue sky and go, "The sky's not blue." Yeah, well, it looks pretty blue to me. Right? You've been my parents now for all this time. I mean, you know what I mean? It was super, super confusing to me. And shortly after they told me this, Roz, they both started drinking. And that's when my life took a really hard turn and things got pretty ugly pretty fast. Pat drank, but she wasn't a mean drunk, but Bob was. Bob would get angry and he was violent. I mean, there's no other way around it. He was not a nice human when he was drinking. He was a great guy when he was sober, but not so much when he was drinking. And so that's when my life changed quite a bit. Well, one day they went to the grocery store. Back in the 60s, you could leave kids at home in America. It was no big thing. You just leave them home and it was safe. In fact, you just call the neighbor across the street and say, "Hey, Joanne, Bob and I are going to the store. David's going to be home. If he needs anything, can he come over there?" And of course, the neighbor would say something like, "Oh, yeah, sure." send him over now and I'll make him a fried bologna sandwich or something, right? And so they left. They went to the store. Well, I knew where the booze was. I knew where the alcohol was. They were hiding it in plain sight. And so I went and grabbed it. It was a half gallon of brandy. And I took it and I poured about a half coffee cup full of brandy and I drank it. Now, bear in mind, I'm 11 years old.
Wow.
Why did I do it? I don't know. I wanted to know what this stuff was. All I knew is that when my parents started drinking it, all hell would break loose. And so when I drank it, I truly believed that I never had a chance. I was an alcoholic on the spot. It was like pouring rocket fuel in my system. It was the reaction that I had to it was, it was just intense at 11 years old. And so that's what started it. And I started kind of drinking at that point. And then by the time I was a junior in high school, they brought me in like the first month of my junior year in high school and said, Mr. Albin, you're out. We're expelling you from high school. It didn't bother me a bit. In fact, I was kind of good with it. I didn't like high school. I didn't feel that anything they were teaching me there was going to help me make money or live my life. At that age, even, I didn't believe in that. I was already an entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, I had an entrepreneurial spirit, I should say. And I got that at a young age. My mom, Pat, used to grow these beautiful flowers in the backyard. She had this huge garden area, and she grew like thousands of flowers. They were beautiful. And so what she would do is she would go and she'd cut them. And she cut them at an angle, not at the bottom. Mm-hmm. She cut them at an angle, and that opened up the surface space to get more water into the flower, so it would last longer, right? And she would arrange them. She had an eye for color, and she would make these beautiful flower arrangements, and she'd tie them off for me. She put them in a bucket, put water in it, and she put some 7-Up into the water. Well, that caused the flower to last twice as long as ones you buy from the flower shop.
Okay.
So I don't know what it is. I guess it's the sugar or something in the 7-Up would cause it to last a long time. And so I started selling flowers on the street corner at a very young age. I got a paper route. Now, in America, a paper route means you're in business for yourself, right? Because every day you had to go to your drop paper place where they drop the papers off. You had to open them, crack open the bundle, fold all the papers, put a rubber band around them to keep them together, load them into your saddlebags, put the bags on the back of your bicycle, and then pedal your way to, where your route was and throw those newspapers onto people's porches or their driveway, wherever they wanted them. And so you had to collect the money. You had to go meet with your den mother on a regular basis. So the bottom line is you, as a young age, when you were a paper boy, you ran your own business. So it was really great experience. Again, so I always knew there was money out there. All I had to do was go find it. I lived across the street from a golf course. Your viewers might like this. I literally would go ride the perimeter of that golf course, and guess what I'd find? Golf balls. And I would take those golf balls, take them home, clean them, wash them up, display them in a box that golf balls come in, that I would go get out of the trash can at the golf course. I'd go back into the parking lot and sell those balls to the golfer, right? So again, I'm being an entrepreneur, and I knew there was money out there. Just go find it. So when I got kicked out of school, it didn't bother me at all, Raj. I was out. And so I got a really good job that day, the day I got kicked out of high school. And that job just helped fuel my addiction. By the time I was in high school, I was already using hard drugs. And so, things just, it escalates. It gets worse and worse and worse, right? And I got married a couple of times. And then on June 8th, 1988, some 35 years ago, when I woke up that morning, I said, all right, that's it. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Because at that point, my life was horrible. I'm grossly addicted to alcohol, heroin, cocaine, other drugs. And I'm in excruciating emotional and physical pain that morning. And I'd been leading up to this, and I knew it was going to get worse. And that morning was, I don't know, that was threshold. And I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. This is way, way too painful. And so the thought I had was, I'm going to take my life. I've got a pistol, and I'm going to load it, which I did. And I stuck it in my mouth. And as I'm getting ready to pull that trigger, it dawns on me. I'm married to a woman. She's got 3 kids. I love these kids. They're living upstairs. I'm living in the basement because they didn't want to be anywhere near me. And I remember thinking, you know what? When you pull that trigger, yeah, maybe all your troubles are over, but their troubles are just going to get started.
That's
because you're killing yourself, but you're killing those kids and everybody in your family. You can't do that, because if you pull that trigger, the cops are coming, the morgue's coming, the news media is coming. It's going to permeate through school. It's going to permeate all over the county, all through the neighborhood. No, man, you can't do that. That's wrong. No, don't do that. Find another way. And so the next thing I know, I've got a thought in my head: call Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, you know what's interesting about that, Roz? I didn't even know who AA was. I had no references, right? I'd never been to AA. I didn't know anybody that was in AA. And yet there it was, the divine thought in my head called AA. And I did. And I affectionately refer to the person who answered the phone as Madge. And the reason I say that is because she talked like this. She probably smoked 2 packs of Pall Mall non-filters a day. But man, was she a beautiful human being. She saved my life. To this day, I don't know the actual name of the woman, but she definitely saved my life. Because she was brutal, man. She was asking me all kinds of questions. Excuse me. She was the gatekeeper.
Okay.
It was her job to ask me enough questions to see if I qualified for her to send somebody to come pick me up. And apparently I must have done that, because she made a phone call and she called a guy by the name of Lauren, and Lauren came to my house and picked me up and took me to an AA meeting. And he stayed with me all day that day. Bless his heart, man. So I went to a 12:30, a 4:30, a 6:30, and an 8:30 meeting. So I went to 4 meetings that first day. And what a beautiful experience. It was an all men's group. And these guys knew that I was a sick kid. I told them I had contemplated suicide that morning. So they gave me, there's a book. It's called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they gave me that book, and on the inside cover, they wrote, before you take that first drink, call one of us. And so they all put their phone number and their first name in that book and handed it to me as I went home that night. Well, one day turned into 2 days turned into a week turned into a month. And when I got to a month, they gave me a medallion, a coin. And it said, to thy own self be true, 1 month of sobriety. And then I got another one at 2 months, 3 months. They gave me another one at 6 months, 9 months, and 1 year. And so this last June 8th here, last June, I just celebrated 35 years of continuous sobriety. And so when I was getting sober, I had insomnia, right? Because I couldn't sleep. I was up late all the time. Well, one night I'm up late. This is in 1988. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep, and I'm watching an infomercial. And Mr. Motivation himself, a young, energetic, enthusiastic Tony Robbins, is selling his personal power program, which is a 1-month program, and he's selling it on an infomercial. Well, I didn't even like it. I thought, what a jerk. He's really pompous. He's all motivated and he's all encouraging. And I wasn't motivated, to say the least. But he said a couple of things that got me. The first thing he said was, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I remember thinking, whoa, that That's me, because that's what I did with drugs and alcohol. I was trying to avoid pain or gain pleasure. And it got to a point where it didn't do either one of them. And then the other thing that he said that got me, he said, the two driving forces in our life, where we make decisions from, is out of inspiration or desperation. And I remember thinking, yeah, well, I'm pretty desperate. So I took out my American Express card. I called the number and I ordered the program and they sent it to me. It came in this big box, you know, and it came on little white things known as cassette tapes.
I know them.
So, right? Yeah. Some of the listeners here are not going to even know what those things are.
I know what you mean. Yeah, you're right.
Right? You go to the Smithsonian in DC and they're sitting right next to the reel-to-reel and the 8-track tapes. But they worked. I plugged in the system. I went through it. I did what the man taught me to do, and it worked. Well, one of my buddies in AA I'm really close with, we're hanging out, and he's like, what's going on with you, man? You know, you look really good. You've been working out. You started your own business. You're getting out of that marriage. You're getting your life figured out. You know, what else are you doing besides going to AA meetings? And I said, well, I've been listening to this guy named Tony Robbins. He goes, I know who Tony Robbins is. I bought his book, but I never read it. Well, okay, maybe you should read it. And I said, listen, man, I bought his program. It's 30 days. It's on cassette tapes. I'll loan it to you. No problem. You just have to promise me you'll go through it. He said, dude, I promise. So I loaned it to him. And he went through it. Well, that's in, 1988, something like that, 88, maybe early 89. Well, 7 years later, in 1995, Dan calls me on the phone. And he said, hey, did you know that Tony Robbins is coming to town? And I'm like, no, man, I had no idea. And he goes, oh, my gosh, dude, come on. You've got to go. You got me into this, man. Let's go see this guy. Go with me. I said, sure, man. Yeah, I can go. I'm open, that weekend. I can do it. He said, great. Let me call you back. So he calls me back like an hour later. And he goes, dude, done. We pick up the tickets at will call. I just took care of everything. And so he goes, but here's what they told us to do. Number 1, bring snacks because we're going to spend a lot of time in the room. Number 2, hydrate, drink a lot of water. You must stay hydrated. Number 3, bring a good attitude and be ready to play full out. And I said, okay, that all makes sense. I said, how much was the ticket? He said, $695. And I said, $700? And he goes, yeah, man, don't worry. You can pay me back. I go, no, that's not the point. I'm just, this is 1995.
Yeah.
$700? What's that worth today? 7 point or something crazy, right? But yeah, buy BitLink with it. So, and just as he's getting off the phone, right? He goes, oh, wait, man, I almost forgot. I got to tell you the best part. I'm like, okay, what? He goes, we're going to be doing a firewalk. That's kind of what it sounded like. And in my head, as soon as I heard the word firewalk, my brain said, oh, hell no. No. We're not doing that. That's not going to happen. But this is all going on in my head. I'm not saying that to Dan, right? I don't want him to think that I'm a chicken, right? So I'm like kind of going along with it, being subservient. Yeah, sure, Dan. Yeah, firewalk. Yeah, great. Yeah, no problem. All right, cool, man. I'll see you then. Hung up the phone and went, nope, not doing it. That's for the crazies. I still want to go see Tony. I know they're not going to make you do it. I won't have to do it when I get there. I'm not worried about it at all. Well, the big day comes. And we get to the event, and Tony takes the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon. And the next thing I know, it's after midnight.
Wow.
We've been in a room with Tony Robbins for 10 hours. Remember the part, bring snacks or you'll starve to death?
That was the reason.
There was your reason, right? And so all of a sudden, it's after midnight, and all of a sudden Tony goes, take your shoes off.
Oops.
And I'm like, oh, no. I see where you're going with that, pal. Well, I'm not taking my shoes off. Ain't going to happen. Well, I'm in a room with 3,500 people, right? That's how big the event was. And guess what they're doing? They're taking their damn shoes off, right? And I'm like, people, no, don't. He's tricking you. Don't do it. You're going to fall for it, right? And so now I've got a dilemma. What am I going to do? Because 3,500 people, we're getting ready to go out into this big parking lot and do this firewalk, and they're all taking their shoes off. Well, if I don't take my shoes off and walk out there, they're going to be, hey, look at that guy over there. He's got his shoes on, right? So I'm like, you can't have that. So I'm like, relax, no big deal. Just take your shoes off, relax, and just go hide in the back. Nobody's going to know. You're going to be fine. Well, nobody's going to know but me, right? Like we always do in life, right? So it gets worse though, right? Because as Tony's got everybody going outside, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting. So everybody, now you got 3,500 people walking out there going, yes, 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 right? And I'm thinking, I'm not clapping or saying yes at all. In fact, I'm walking out there going, no, I ain't doing this. Well, it gets worse. Because once you get out there, right, he's got African drummers.
Wow.
And so now everybody's clapping, yes, yes, and the drummers are going, dun, 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 dun. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what a dog and pony show this is. Well, logistically, how you firewalk 3,500 people is, when you get out there over in the corner, there's a giant fire. And it's huge, Roz. It's every bit of 30 feet wide, 70 feet long. And they've been feeding it wood all day for 10 hours. And it's just a big giant pile of coals at the end of the evening, right? It just renders coals at the end of the evening. And so how they set this up is they take wheelbarrows over to that big pit and they load the coals in a wheelbarrow. And then they bring a wheelbarrow in between two lanes of sod, of grass. They call it a fire lane. And that fire lane is about 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. And so what they do is they just take a shovel and they sprinkle those coals, on top of the grass, and that's what you walk on. Well, I'm not having any of it. I'm hiding in the back. And so Tony Robbins knows that this is probably the most life-changing experience any human can go through. It creates a superpower paradigm shift, and it's an amazing experience. And he knows that. He also knows there's people like me that are going to hide out in the back, the chickens, and he doesn't want us to miss out on it. He wants us to participate in that experience, if at all possible, so it can create the life-changing shift. So what's he do? He trains people to come find you. So I'm hiding out in the back. I'm thinking everything's cool. I've got everything under control. No, not so much. Because here comes this guy. And he makes eye contact with me. And once he made eye contact with me, he never took his eyes off me. Right? I'm guessing Tony probably trains him to do it that way. And so this guy's coming at me, right? And he gets about 20 feet from me. And he stops and he looks at me really funny, right? Like there's something wrong. And he goes, hey man, are you okay? And of course, when we're not okay, what do?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. We lie, right? Oh yeah, all good here, man. Nothing to see here. Move along, And so all of a sudden he goes, well, hey man, are you going to walk tonight? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, what? Didn't you get the memo? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not going to go walk on fire. And he goes, well, hey, man. He goes, hey, that's not a problem. No worries, man. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. And I thought, well, okay. I like this guy. He's going to get me out of here. And then here's this perfect stranger. I don't know who this guy is to this day. I don't know. But he changed my life, and he changed hundreds of thousands of other people's lives. Because without this stranger right now, I'm not sitting here on your podcast. I'm not on the Tribe Architect if it wasn't for this guy, because the question he asked me was, wouldn't you at least like to watch? And I thought, yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds cool. Let's do that. Let's go watch these people burn their feet off. Well, he goes, well, look, man, you can't see anything from way back here. Just get in line and follow it up there. And eventually you'll get up close enough where you can see it. Well, he's telling the truth. Well, by this time it's going, man. The people are clapping, they're chanting, the drums are going. People are already firewalking. You can hear them in the celebration side of things. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're cheering on. I mean, Mike, there's nothing like it on earth that I've ever experienced other than a Tony Robbins seminar. It is freaking intense. Well, I'm kind of walking along, right? And all of a sudden this guy comes up to me, this another perfect stranger. And he whispers in my ear. And he says, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. And pew, this guy just disappeared into the night. And I'm like, who was that? What was that? What does that mean? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I kind of walking along and walk along to understand. I've got hundreds of people in front of me. There's 3,500 people to start, right? I can't see anything. Again, I can hear it. But all of a sudden I get to a point in the line where I can see at an angle. I can see over there. I can't see in front, but I can see over here. And bro, they're doing it. They're firewalking. Every race, every creed, every color, every age, they're doing this. And my brain is trying to figure it out because it's never seen anything like this before, right? And I'm thinking, what's wrong with these people? Why would they do this? What's the metaphor here? I don't get this. And so now I'm mesmerized. I can't take my eyes off it, right? It's like a car accident. You know, you're not supposed to look at it and you can't take your eyes off it. Well, it's kind of what's going on here. I can't take my eyes off of it. And I'm just mesmerized. I'm walking along and I'm walking along and I'm walking along. And all of a sudden, boom, guess where I am? Next to the line. Yep, right there. And so now I'm looking down at that fire lane, right? It's 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. All the coals are on there and they're glowing bright red. There's no question that they're hot coals, right? And there's a wheelbarrow there. You can feel the heat coming on. My heart is pounding. It feels like it's going to come out of my chest any second. I am scared to death. And all of a sudden, there's a trainer standing there. and he goes, eyes up. Oh, all right. So, all right, gotcha. Yeah. My eyes are up. All right, that's right. I was in a room with Tony Robbins for 10 hours. What did he teach me? Keep my eyes up. Okay, all right, they're up. Look to the celebration end. Keep your eyes focused on that. Don't stare at what you fear. Breathe. Turn fear into exhilaration. So now, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm kind of breathing. All of a sudden, the trainer goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I said, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. And he could tell, man. He could tell I was leaving a lot on the table. I was not in a peak state, and he knew that, and he needed to get me into a peak state. So he screamed at me, louder, stronger. And I threw my hands in the air, and I screamed. Yeah. And what did the guy say? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. And he said go, and guess what I did? I went. Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take that first step, oh, I guarantee you'll take the second, fourth, and fifth.
Fair enough.
You are right. You are not going to stop on those calls. Well, he positions two people at the end, and they lock arms, right? And they catch you, and they're like, "Stop! Wipe your feet and celebrate." So I'm wiping my feet and I celebrate, and all of a sudden it dawns on me. I can feel it. I burnt myself really, really bad. And so I lift up my foot and I look at it. And it's dirty, but there's no burns. Oh, it's my other foot. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's dirty, but there's no burns. I just walked across coals that are 1,000 degrees. I was successful at it, and I don't have a clue how I did it. None. People ask me all the time, hey, well, I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that I did it, and I didn't burn myself. And, you know, I think you've probably done this. Most of us have, right? You do something really cool, really awesome, and you don't really know how you did it. You just did it, and then you take credit for it, right? You're like, that's right. That's this guy right here. I did that. How you doing? I'll be here all day. I take questions. I'll be here all weekend. Right? And man, it's hard to explain. It was so exhilarating. It was such a cool feeling because now you're in the celebration and you're with a couple of thousand people and everybody's cheering and jumping up and down. And it's like, at that point, you can do anything. It's like, all right, when's the bus going to be here? Let's go climb Mount Everest, right? I mean, that's what you feel like. It's a super powerful feeling. But you know where it gets really interesting? At least it did for me. The next day. This event's a 4-day event. That was day one, the evening of day one. Now we're in day two. So now 3,500 people just did the firewalk. The night before, we're standing in the foyer of the venue getting ready to go inside. They're staging us. And to this day, I've never seen anything like it in my life. The connection, people were getting along humanistically, unlike anything I've ever seen in my life.
I think those kind of experiences are creating those connections, definitely.
Yeah, right. So we experienced something so unbelievable the night before because, it raises your self-worth, your self-confidence, your self-belief. Your vibration is raised.
Yeah.
And so there we are, getting along like crazy in a really good way, right? People are laughing and they're crying, literally. They're talking about the firewalk, and I'm just watching them. I'm observing it. I'm like, this is beautiful. This is gorgeous. This is the way we're supposed to get along. This is the way people are supposed to interact with each other, help each other, encourage one another, love each other, just be there, all of it. It's a beautiful thing to be part of. Well, later in the event, I met one of Tony's trainers. Really sweet guy, love him to death. His name was Ted Macy. And him and his wife, Mary, both were trainers for Tony. And so I'm just talking to Ted, super nice guy. And I'm like, hey, man, this must be really cool that you get to come and play in this environment and be around it all the time. The synergy of this. He goes, oh, yeah. I get to do this 8-10 times a year. Wow. And I'm going, oh, man, that's awesome. And he goes, as a matter of fact, he goes, you seen all those people over there with the black shirts on with the pink writing on the back? Yeah. He goes, they're volunteers, man. They're just like you. They came to a firewalk. They loved it. They want to come back. They want to contribute. So listen, when you get home, call Robbins Research, call Tony's company, tell them you want a volunteer crew application. They'll send you one because we're always looking for good people. And I said, oh, man, awesome. Well, hell, when I got home, I called and they sent me the application. It's like 6 pages long. Filled it out, sent it back, and like 9 weeks later, I get a letter in the mail. And it says, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So there I am, man. I got my foot in the door with Tony Robbins. And because of my application, I lived on a farm, so I knew how to use tools and I knew how to use a log splitter. I had a military background. I had a security background. So they put me on the security team to help take care of Tony's celebrities. And they put me on the fire team, which is right where I wanted to be. And so I crewed probably 5 or 6 times. And then they offered me the position as a subcontractor. And so I started helping take care of Tony's celebrities. And they made me the assistant captain on the fire team. So this was all happening in 96. Excuse me. So in 2003, Tony offered me the fire captain's position. And that's just a fancy word, fancy name for Tony wanted me to take over all of his firewalks globally. Now, at the time, we were homeschooling. And so I was like, well, I can't do that. I can't be away from my family that much. And they said, why? When I'm like, because I homeschool and I'm a big part of my kids' education. And they said, oh, okay, well, what if we paid to have your kids go on the road with us? Would that help? Would that make a difference? Well, yeah, of course it would. So there we were. my family, my kids and my wife and I are on the road with Tony Robbins, traveling around the world, putting on firewalks. In fact, our first event that I took the family to was in Sydney, Australia. So that was magical. That all happened. That all went down in 2003. In 2005, we were from your neck of the woods. We were in the UK, in London. We did the largest firewalk that has ever been done in the world. We were at the Excel Center out in the Docklands, and we firewalked 12,300 people, which was a world record.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, let me disclose something here. Guinness Book of World Records was not there, so they didn't certify it as a world record. However, let me say this: there's never been a firewalk anywhere close to being that big in the world, other than maybe another Tony Robbins seminar somewhere in the world. So that went down in 2005, and then in 2014, man, my life changed forever, and it kept changing. You know, all these wonderful things are happening in my life as a result of a guy that, you know, years ago said, well, wouldn't you at least like to watch? Right? And a woman who made a phone call and sent a guy to come rescue me and take me to an AA meeting, you know, because again, without those people in my life, none of this happened. And so 2014, I'm driving down the road one day, never forget it, never forget the phone call. And got a phone call, and it was from Google. Little company called Google. And Google wants to know, hey, are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yeah. Why? What can I do for you? Well, if you're not under any non-compete or, you know, contractual obligation, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. I'm like, okay, well, homeboy's a free agent, man. I can do whatever I want. And so they went on to tell me that they had a class of 148 executives that had been in a 9-month curriculum, really intense, and they were going to graduate. And they wanted to anchor in the position with them. Notice what they did there, anchoring. They were really smart. They knew they wanted to create a really powerful experience to tie it all together. Pay attention, corporate America, CEOs, entrepreneurs. That's the way that works. It's why Robbins did it. It's why Google called me. So when we started talking, I'm like, well, they wanted to do it during the day. They wanted to have a graduation. They wanted to do the experience, have lunch, and then they could have some beers afterwards. Well, I'm like, well, you can't do it during the middle of the day. You can't do a firewalk. It's too dangerous. There's too many things. I can't see the coals. I got to see them at night. I have to see the color of those coals. Really important. I said, now, what we could do is we could do a glass walk. And they went, a glass walk? Like walking on broken glass? Yep. And they're like, ooh, tell us about that. And so that's what they opted to do. In fact, I did 2 glass walks for Google. And shortly after that, guess what, Raj, man? I'm at NASA. I'm at Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Remax, Heineken, Chick-fil-A, YMCA, the Entrepreneurship organization, high schools, colleges. I mean, my whole career exploded right after Google. And then this last year, we created the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy. And so what's groovy about that is now people around the world that want to learn these type of experiences, right? Because we do more than firewalking and glass walking. We offer a lot of other experiences as well. So they come to my academy, they spend a week with me, I train them, and then they go back to their respective businesses. So corporations send people, you know, through their HR department, or entrepreneurs, business owners, trainers, coaches. I get a variety of people that come to the academy. In fact, we had our Zoom call last night. My academy's coming up this October. It's the 3rd through the 7th. We are sold out, and it's a beautiful thing. So, you know, no pun intended, but ever since that moment, you know, after Google, we've been going hot and heavy ever since.
Amazing. That's really amazing. Interesting journey with a lot of good people on the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I know that you mentioned that you are homeschooling your kids. So because I'm doing the same thing, I'd be interesting to ask you what can you tell us about that, and
Oh yeah,
what's your
yeah.
experience?
It was, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is the best decision we ever made. Who better to teach your kids than you?
Agree,
So as
100%.
long as you're fully committed and you're all in, and you make sure that details matter, then you now control the curriculum. You control the input. Feed them full of encouragement, motivation, inspiration. There's a lot of great teachers out there that the school system never, ever introduced these people to.
Yeah,
One of the first books I had my son read once he got to a certain level was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Why is that book not in schools? It's
well, a lot
insane.
of books are not in schools,
Well,
unfortunately.
this is
So
true.
yeah,
You're out. Yeah, good point. There's lots of books that should be in school that are not.
yeah,
In America, they don't even teach a kid to balance a checkbook. They don't teach them how to get a mortgage. They don't teach them anything about business or entrepreneurship. It's just very regimented. Sit down, pass or fail, shut up. Whoa, that's not how you encourage a child. Teach them self-worth.
yeah,
My kids got huge doses of self-worth. I preached it into them their entire life. They're worthy. They're smart. What do you want in life? Then decide and go get it.
exactly. Yeah.
So, they were hanging around Tony Robbins, for God's sakes.
I'm sure it was an amazing experience for them. So
Yeah. And if you were to see and meet my kids today, Ross, yeah, you better believe it, man. Sure. So it's such a gift. And I get it, parents. It's hard. No one said
it's
it was
not
going to be
easy.
easy.
Agree, it's not easy at all.
It's
But
not.
it's worth it.
But if you're fully committed and you're all in, you're going to make such a big difference in your kid's life. It's going to completely change, the trajectory and the path that they're on. And because the bottom line is, if you scream and yell at them and you tell them and they're wrong and you pass, you fail, and you put all the pressure on them, then once we started homeschooling our kids, there was no pressure on them. There wasn't any pass and fail. The way our curriculum worked was, if they needed to learn something, they went to the book, they read it, and they found it. So it taught them to be really, really resourceful.
Yeah,
My son today is sick. He's so good at that. Because he found that he could learn anything. And once he made that distinction, he goes, man, I can learn anything. And if I need a little help, hire a mentor.
exactly.
Get a tutor.
Definitely, we need that. We need that
Yeah.
in our journey.
My wife and I at the time, we didn't have the skills mathematically. Later on, when he decided he knew what he wanted to do, he wanted to become, go into computer science, computer engineering. He had to get into calculus and trigonometry and all that.
Yeah,
Well, that's not me. Remember, I got kicked out of high school in my junior year, right? So I'm not exactly a good mentor to get him through math. But there's a guy right over there who's really good at it. And for $25 a month, he'll tutor you.
yeah, exactly.
So, right? So success leaves clues. We are who we spend time with. And his tutors helped him a lot. And now he's working for a really great company. He's making really good money. He's really happy. He works remotely. He can live anywhere in the country he wants to live. His fiance, Miss Kelsey, is amazing. Super, super smart, brilliant. She's got a great job. She works remotely. So they have the perfect situation set up. They can go live anywhere they want as long as they've got a good internet connection.
Exactly. That's what I'm doing too. So that was my dream from the beginning, and that's what I'm trying to do with my little one and my wife. So yeah,
Good for you.
that's
You'll look back on it someday, Roz, and go, well, you know what? That was probably one of the smartest decisions we ever made. What a gift of love. Yeah, was it hard? Yeah. Did we have to sacrifice? Yeah. Well, guess what? When you bring kids into the world, welcome to the world of sacrificing.
Exactly.
That's just the way it is, man. And now they're grown and they're doing well. And, my daughter she lived about 20 minutes that way. And her and I have been together for 27 years, her entire life. Even after when her mother and I separated and divorced, she came to live with me. Both the kids came to live with me. And so, there's been a daddy-daughter relationship between us forever. Well, she just moved to Texas. I live up here in the Appalachian Mountains in the northwest corner of the state of North Carolina. And I love it up here. I love living in these mountains. I got clean air. I got, the water coming into my cabin here is mountain spring water.
Wow,
so
amazing. Yeah.
No chemicals, right? It's all clean. We drink it, shower in it. I love it. And so anyway, she met a really great guy. They have kids now. He just got a really great job in a place called Granbury, Texas. And his parents are from there, and his friends and family. So all their resources are there. Up here, living in the mountains, they didn't have the job opportunity. We're there. He just got a really, really, really great job with a great company. So as much as it pains me in my heart to know that my grandson and my rest of my family and daughter and son-in-law and my granddaughter, used to be 20 minutes right over there, and I could go visit whenever I want and bring Kate over to my house and have grandpa, grandson sleepovers. Well, I can't do that anymore. At least not, because they went from 20 minutes to 2 days away. And you know what?
Yeah.
I had to make a really important decision about that, because it can be devastating if you don't handle the situation carefully. And here's what I chose to do. I chose gratitude, because I'm a 2-hour plane ride. So I drive down to Charlotte, North Carolina, get on a plane, fly to Dallas, and I'm there within an hour.
Especially these days, it's not that hard anymore. You can travel and you can.
Right.
It's not like the way we used to do that. We lived in Sydney, so we had to travel back to Europe. It was at least a 24-hour flight. So, yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. I've been to Sydney several times, and yeah, you're right. That's a long time to be in airports and in an airplane. Exactly. But I loved it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's beautiful.
I love the Australians. They're such beautiful people. I love their culture. They treat each other with love and kindness. I'll just say that the Americans could learn a lot from the Australians, from the Aussies, when it comes to that. They have the Aussie, oi, 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 oi. And so, yeah, I love them, man. I've got some really great friends that are Australian. And again, I love the culture. I love the people.
Definitely.
So, yeah, man, that's kind of how things unfolded. And so now, we have 3 types of clients typically. 2 things happen here with either they send somebody to my academy or they come and they hire me. And so typically people hire me one of 3 reasons. 1, things are breaking down. Things are not good. There's a lot of dissension. People are fighting over masks. They're fighting over vaccines. They're fighting over the political platform. I love Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump. Oh, shut up already. Who cares? What's that got to do with business?
Exactly.
It doesn't. Yeah. What's that got to do with your job or your coworker? Leave them alone. It's none of your business. Mind your own beeswax, man. Focus on your job. And if you don't do that, guess what happens? Dissension. And so when people don't get along at the job, guess what happens? Number 1, they make mistakes. Number 2, people can get hurt. Number 3, production goes into the toilet. Yeah. So guess whose job that is to fix? It's the CEOs of the company. And the CEO doesn't know what to do. So what's he do? He comes and hires me. We let the fire fix it.
Fair enough. So the fire's job.
Yeah, it's the fire's job. And then, the other people that hire me, sometimes they're like mediocrity. Things aren't real good, but things aren't real bad either. They're kind of in the middle. And sometimes companies hire me when they're playing full out. They're doing really good. It's kicking on all 8 cylinders, and they just want to level up. They want to take it to the next level. So those are typically the 3 times, different situations where companies call us, and they don't want to do anything other than write me a check.
And get the results at the end.
Yeah. My team comes in, we set everything up, we do all the training, we do the presentation, I incorporate the board break with the firewalk, which has really been a powerful part of, in addition to the firewalk. Because the board break comes out of the martial arts world, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to martial arts and you graduate in a belt, then you typically will break a board, right? You'll break it with your hand, you'll break it with your elbow, you'll break it with your foot, you'll break it with your knee, whatever. And again, that graduates you into a new belt. Well, what I've done is I take that into my firewalk situation, and we have them write something on front of the board they want to move towards. We have them write something on back of the board that they need to move away from. And then I have them put anybody's name on the board that they're in conflict with. So in other words, if forgiveness and reconciliation is part of that relationship, it ends tonight. Stop carrying around resentments for another human being on the planet. That does not serve you. It clogs your brain. It ends tonight. And then to create the rite of passage, right, from an ancestral standpoint, we have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. And that creates a very powerful experience. We take them outside, they break the board, we walk them in a circle, they do their firewalk, they come back around, they throw their board into the fire. And so when you take both of those experiences and combine them into one, they're never, ever, 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 ever going to forget that evening. It's just not going to happen. They may forget me, Roz, right? Who's Dave Albin? You know, they'll forget who I am. They'll forget what I said, but here's what they won't forget.
That experience.
They'll never forget how I made them feel. And they'll never forget that moment. Their self-worth, their self-confidence, and their self-belief. And it does it collectively. So if you're with all your your teammates and your coworkers, and you all do that collectively, that means you share the experience together. That means that you'll work, and the next thing you know, they're working together, they're getting along, and again, the fire has got them back to the humanistic way of communicating. Just like I said, that second day of the Tony
back to the
seminar,
connection that you had with the other guys.
When I was watching
definitely.
all that, and that's what got me, and that's why I believe I've been positioned in this world to do this. It's what I've been called to do. When I retired from Tony in 2014, one of the last things he said to me, he said, "Albie, hey man, with great wisdom comes great responsibility. Make us proud." And I think I've done that.
That's amazing. I heard your stories in other places, but it's amazing to actually feel it and experience it by having a chat with you. So yeah, that was really good. Dave, can you share one piece of advice you would give to our listeners who are striving to build resilient, innovative tribes in their families and businesses?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. I've been immersed in the personal development industry for over 3 decades. So working around Tony Robbins for almost 20 years, there have been some things that have rubbed off.
I'm sure.
And I'll be happy to share that. I think there's a couple of them. One, proximity. In other words, love your family, choose your friends, and be careful who you choose as a friend, because you will become who you spend time with. It's an absolute fact. Yeah. If I take your 5 friends and average out how much they make per year and average that out, you're within 10%.
Yeah.
And so that's really important. Number 2, state management. Controlling your state is extremely important. The other thing would be, don't negotiate with yourself. Stop negotiating. If you say you're going to get out of bed at 6 o'clock and do something, then do it. Yeah. Because if you go, well, I want to sleep in, that's negotiations. And when you allow that kind of back talk, where you told yourself you're going to do it, did you start talking yourself out of it? No, that's bad. Understand what that is. That's a pattern. And patterns are everything. And you need to understand them, how they work for you, and how they work against you. Because any pattern you can interrupt. So look at those. Because, Roz, I believe the 2 most important times in anybody's life is the moment they're born and the moment they figure out why.
Yeah.
I was told by one of my mentors years ago, and I love this, and I share it with every audience that I can get in front of. And that is, every single human on this planet has two lives. And the second one starts when we realize we have only one. Get
That's
clear about
powerful.
what you want.
Very powerful.
Yeah. Get clear about what you want. And then one final thing. Everything in our life is, we create a story about it. Right now, everybody's listening to this is creating a story. Right now, you, Roz, are creating a story about what I'm sharing with you here. Everything that happens in your life, you create a story. I don't care what happens to you, good, bad, or indifferent. You create a story. Now, be careful with that story creation. Create empowering stories. Everything I shared with you here today, yeah, a lot of bad stuff happened to me, but I chose not to turn it into some way that I would seek sympathy or get attention. No, I knew that wouldn't serve me. That's the only reason I didn't go down that road. So you want to change your life? Literally change your story. And so again, everything that happens to us, we have our hand on the on and off switch. We have our hand on the knob on the volume control. We can do it all. I'll never forget the story one time of a guy that was in prison, and they went in and interviewed the guy, and they started the interview, and the more he was telling his story, the more angry he got. And so when he's telling his story, he's telling it. He's like, he was unbelievably sexually abused. He was beat. He wasn't fed. He was locked in an attic for days and days, sometimes weeks at a time. The abuse was horrendous. It was unbelievable. You've never heard anything like it. And when he gets to the end of the story, he's in rage. And he's screaming into the camera. And he's like, and if you were raised the way I was, this is where you end up. Super intense. And right after after he says that, the camera pulls away. And the next thing you know, it shows a countryside. And off in the distance, you can tell there's a beautiful house out there. And it gets closer and closer to the house. And the next thing you know, the camera comes down and the front doors open and the camera comes through the doors. And as soon as it comes in, you see the kids running through. The kids are playing, right? They run in front of the camera, and the camera swings over and you can see mom. She's in the kitchen, right? And you can almost smell the chicken noodle soup and the chocolate chip cookies are baking, right? This beautiful, beautiful home and a beautiful family. And then the camera comes back over and there's dad. And he's sitting over there in the easy chair by the fireplace. And he starts to tell his story. And as he's telling the story, he goes, I was sexually abused. I can't even tell you some of the things that was done to me by my family. It's too horrible to even talk about on television. I won't go into details here, but I'll just let you know that I was horribly sexually abused. They used to beat me with all kinds of things, everything from a ruler to their hands to a stick. I got beat almost every single day I could look forward to getting beat. Sometimes I didn't get fed for days at a time. I get locked in my attic. And so he's telling almost the exact same story as the other guy, right? And all of a sudden, he goes, and you know what? If you were treated as badly as I was, what else could you do or become than an amazing father and an amazing husband and an amazing human being? And then at the end of that statement, they flash on the screen at the bottom. Those two guys were brothers. One chose one path, the other chose a different path. I think that, Man's Search for Meaning was probably one of the greatest books that was ever written about what men are capable of. And so read that book, because there's a man that lived in Auschwitz and they murdered his family. They made him stand outside naked in the cold every day. He didn't know whether he was going to go to the ovens or be killed that day. He watched thousands and thousands of people die every day. And how did he make it out? How did Viktor Frankl make it out? He created purpose, a purpose-driven life, because he said someone has to tell this story. And so that was the driving force. So, and here's what he taught us. No matter what we take from you, we can make you stand outside. We won't feed you. You're naked. You're cold. We'll steal your dignity. We'll kill your family right in front of you. But there's one thing he realized that the Nazis could not take from Viktor Frankl. And what was it? His attitude. He's in control. He has to relinquish. He has to give up his attitude. And he chose not to do that. And that's what saved his life. That's what created the purpose. And that's created a man that came out of Auschwitz and left us some pearls of knowledge and wisdom that hopefully many humans will grasp onto that. So, Raz, I want to thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you. It was really...
I know you're getting started, and I always love a host who's going out there and wants to do things, big things, and wants to, create a safe environment where listeners can come and hopefully hear something that, is going to inspire them and spark some interest in their brain and hopefully change their lives. So again, thanks for having me on it. I really
thank you. Really inspiring. Thanks again.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please visit thetribearchitect.com/2. Then share the link with one person that you believe it would add value to. Until next time, thank you for listening.